Clean Core is a really good idea. Clean Core is the kind of like having the same gauge railroad track, because otherwise, if you've ever been in the old, I was traveling in Europe in the 70s. Spain had a different gauge than France, and when you got to the border there, they had to switch cars because they couldn't go on. That was deliberate, so you couldn't invade. Put your army on a train and invade. You don't want that. That literally stifles innovation, and it stifled their innovation. It stifles everyone else. So having Clean Core is, of course, essential to that, having that solid platform. But then if Clean Core is everybody has the same Clean Core, then there's no differentiation. That's the standard. So now differentiation, competitive advantage comes at the edges. Enter the partners. Enter the, what BTP can do with building extensions that really make it possible for the customer to differentiate. And that's what a lot of what we heard today was really, how do you do that in a strategic way so that 2 years from now, 5 years from now, next Rev S5, if you don't do another greenfield implementation.
Thanks so much for joining another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. This week, we have the pleasure of Josh Greenbaum joining us. He is a translator, and he's got the experience going all the way back to R3, if anyone remembers how long ago SAP came out with that product. He is an analyst helping with research and strategy and consulting around the entire SAP ecosystem. And he has a passion for supply chain and procurement. Josh, thank you so much for joining today.
My pleasure. It's great to be here. And I have a passion for enterprise architecture too. You might want to explore. Yeah.
This is perfect. So this enterprise architect is a concept, it's a term, and it's sometimes a role, but it's not always super well defined or understood. But these people that are in these roles have such a tremendous opportunity to make a massive positive impact on all of these companies, a never-ending climb to be better, to create the capacity to serve their customers better.
Now more than ever.
Right. Yeah. So how should people think about the role of an enterprise architect in this journey that we're all on?
Well, it's a role that's evolving just the way digitization is evolving the enterprise. And I think that's a really good sort of metaphor. I mean, everything we've learned about the world of business in the last 3 years or 4 years or 5 years is that it's dynamic beyond our ability to comprehend in some places. And therefore, we need to have the IT systems that really meet that challenge, and IT needs to meet the business challenge and vice versa. And in the middle is this role, the architect. The architect is supposed to architect the technology to meet the business needs. It's supposed to be there pulling the business, along and getting it to doing the kind of translation work that I do. What's exciting is to really sort of sit at the nexus of this moment when it really is dramatically changing yet again. It's an inflection point in a way, because in the SAP ecosystem, there's this new set of tools, this business transformation suite, that is really, in a way, empowering enterprise architects and their growing cadre of fellow travelers in ways that's never been done before, and really providing a set of tools that structures this process of taking business requirements and translating them in technology and then delivering. That structure is what we're here to learn about. It's the structure that SAP's laying, the groundwork they're laying for the next many years. And so it's fun to kind of see this firsthand and to rub shoulders with these folks who are, I think, prescient enough to understand that, they got to figure this stuff out, and the time is now.
I think that challenge of bringing together business with the technology and helping to cut through some of the hype in various technology, some of it underhyped, some of it overhyped, and helping to find a business design meets technical design that's simple and it works.
Right.
This to me is this level of simplicity without oversimplicity and without massive overcomplication. There's a sweet spot there. And that's tricky for folks to find. And I'm imagining that you've seen it done well and done poorly.
Yeah, and it's kind of, there's a lot of things that are like that. I mean, the typographer's art, at the end of the day, is extremely complex. I studied that because I was there for the desktop publishing revolution. And the ultimate expression of the typographer's art is that you don't even notice. You just turn that page and it's just, your eye flows along the article beautifully, and it's this experience you don't even realize how much work went into it.
Yeah.
That's the architect. The ideal moment of glory for the enterprise architect is that customer interaction, that moment when the product from way down there in the nth tier of the supply chain is in their hand after they've opened up the package and there's a smile and they're checking the box, satisfaction. That needs to be dead simple. And at the other hand, it's immensely complex to make that simplicity.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. There's so much work and due diligence and research that goes into designing and helping to bring the right technology solutions. And sometimes procurement teams can get in the way a little bit with big, complex, hairy RFPs that sometimes overweight a set of features instead of a solid architecture that's going to work and fit together well. And I think that's a big opportunity for folks to find the simple way to go and solve what could otherwise be a very complex problem. These enterprise architects, they're almost like the defender of simple for this, aren't they?
That's got to be their job. And again, the defender of simple and the sort of the funneler of complexity towards simple. And I like to think of supply chain, other than the fact that I'm quite passionate about it, because this is a place where technology and people and everything sort of comes together in this either massive hairball. In fact, it usually is a massive hairball because everything's changing simultaneously. But to be able to, and this is what I love about this conference, be able to think, how do we plan ahead for that? How do we set up an IT system that anticipates the problems we will have in such a way that when they occur, we're not playing catch up, we're not firefighting. There was a plan here. That was one of the comments. If your job as an enterprise architect is to split the middle between being this deep, long-range strategist and being this firefighter, you got to be the practical strategist firefighter, because at the end of the day, you're not going to anticipate everything, but you better be able to have that agility and flexibility to go there. That's hard. I'm going to say the other thing I love about this conference and why I'm looking forward, a number of years from now, is that this concept, this job is changing. The people who touch the enterprise architect role, who are in the enterprise architect role, they're changing too. There's thousands of job recs out there for enterprise architect. It's only going to grow because it is essentially it's one of the key components of getting it right for all these different stakeholders in a way that has this beautiful simplicity to cover up that growing complexity.
And it's the growing complexity, the auto-adjusting kind of capability that I think we're all seeking. And that resiliency, it's a little bit like, how many times since COVID have you heard about the glory of just-in-time inventory? It's just not as popular as it once was.
That ship, pun intended, has
got stuck and sailed, right? Somewhere else. And this kind of learning, the future doesn't fit in the containers of the past, and whether those are shipping containers or architectural containers, doesn't really matter, because this idea of where are things going, the ability to respond quickly, the ability to have a set of systems that give you insight, give you the ability to move quickly, it flies in the face of the multi-year, multi-million-dollar investments and the giant transformation programs. They're expensive and they don't have a great track record.
Right. And they tend to have been approaching the problem as a set of silos that each need their own thing, as opposed to looking at this integrated end-to-end process and really understanding, how do you break the silos? How do you make it so that even if it's not, in the SAP world, it would all be wall-to-wall SAP, and while we're having fantasies, I'd like a pony for Christmas. But the reality is, and this is again why this architect role is so important, and why what SAP is doing is finally reacting in the right direction. At a minimum, SAP now understands they've got to support heterogeneity. The architect has to live in this heterogeneous world that's immensely complex. They don't get to necessarily make the decision that the sales front end is Salesforce, the back end is SAP ERP on that part of the business, but over here they're running some old bond thing that they had got 35 years ago. Their job is to go with what you got and make the very best of it. I would like to think that along the way, by putting those best practices out and showing what is not just doable today but possible tomorrow, they also have the role of pushing the technology innovation and strategy forward in a very positive way, as opposed to this silo, here's CRM, here's supply chain, here's HXM, and never the
Never there's something. Yeah. It's, to me, it's that directionally correct, right? And understanding it's got to work for the people that are in the business and take the administrivia out of their job, not just give it a prettier form.
Right.
And when I imagine that sort of transition that gets tricky for these organizations is when they hit a gap in their roadmap. SAP tends to build 80% of what the market needs, leaves the last 20% up to customers, partners, etc. And when you're looking at the last 20%, this is often one of the greatest, well, what do we want to do now? Well, we want to stay standard, but we want to innovate, and we still have to be able to handle these things. And what I know our team has been challenged by SAP and others is to show up with prepackaged add-ons. And this is challenging the idea that it's either standard or custom.
Right.
And this is one of the old mode containers that doesn't fit going forward.
Right.
And being able to create the opportunity to look beyond a RICEF list for how do I solve these next things and take directionally correct bites. And I think that's one of the themes that we're seeing here is the way tools and technologies are available today to go and make this possible.
Right. Within the context of what the customer has to work with.
Yeah.
So, and here's the challenge, and this is a challenge for the partner community as much as it is for the customer community. Clean Core is a really good idea. Clean Core is the kind of like having the same gauge railroad track, because otherwise, if you've ever been in the old, I was traveling in Europe in the 70s, Spain had a different gauge than France. And when you got to the border there, they had to switch cars because they couldn't go on. That was deliberate, so you couldn't invade. Put your army on a train and invade. You don't want that. That literally stifles innovation, and it stifled their innovation. It stifles everyone else. So having Clean Core is of course, essential to that, having that solid platform. But then if Clean Core is everybody has the same Clean Core, then there's no differentiation. That's the same. So now differentiation, competitive advantage comes at the edges. Enter the partners. Enter what BTP can do with building extensions that really make it possible for the customer to differentiate. And that's what a lot of what we heard was really, how do you do that in a strategic way so that 2 years from now, 5 years from now, next Rev S5, if you don't do another greenfield implementation, which nobody want to do the first time and no one wants to do the nth time either.
Definitely doesn't want to have to do it another one.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's a contrast. And it's even an oversimplification sometimes of, we've got so much customization, we have to go greenfield. And I don't want to knock that because it is sometimes true. However, often as you're designing that new greenfield world, the business objects and the processes are unchanged in many respects. And what we've seen repeatedly for organizations that have selected greenfield is that they either get into the requirements gathering and then somebody, often an enterprise architect, needs to go and evaluate whether or not that old way of adapting still makes sense. And if somebody's selected greenfield, it often means that you need to go into the old thing and disassemble the IKEA furniture, hope you don't lose any bolts, and go and install it in the new system, or do some sort of a similar thing in the new system. Right. And I think that's one of the big opportunities, is to create the space, and this to me is a great enterprise architect, creates the space for the big transformation, the big improvement, the giant leap forward, to find the best of what's been invested in the past and directionally correct towards where the organization needs to get to in the future. Right. I believe that enterprise architect that can help navigate that bridge to help cost effectively get from where they were to where they're going without a full rebuild, because very few organizations can afford that. Right. And the light switch effect of making the change all at once is also pretty tricky. Yeah. There's a few, no names mentioned, but there are a few organizations that have made changes like that. And unless the business testing and engagement is really fantastic, you find things after go live that you wish you'd found sooner.
We've all heard those stories. One of the essential parts of the job is to be a good storyteller, is to be able to tell. And those are the story, that's near and dear to my heart because that's essentially what I spend a lot of time doing. Be able to explain tech complexity to the CEO, not just your CIO, who better get it or what are they doing there, and translate that CEO's perspective back to the realm of the possible.
Yeah.
That was one of the better, sort of light bulb moments talking about debossification and, the same idea. The enterprise architect has to be the storyteller. They also have to sort of not just sit there and, not to sit there and say, that's a brownie. I don't know if we want to go there.
That's brilliant.
That was a metaphor, yeah. It only looks like a brownie.
It only looks like a brownie on the table when you zoom out, if you squint a little bit. If you look closer, you go, whoa, not touching that.
I'm not going to touch it.
Clean up on aisle 7.
Yes, exactly. So I think, that was another thing is how do you take this big strategic view of implementing strategy? You don't just create a strategy and then hope something happens.
That's interesting.
Right?
Yeah. The number of organizations you can think of where, in year one, if you look back at your notes from talking to them, in year one, they were doing their strategy and roadmap. And the year later, you look back at your notes and they're doing their strategy and roadmap. And you look back at their notes and they're road mapping or they're setting their lighthouse something. And when do you do anything?
Right.
You got to execute or it's all just theory.
And then, moving through the day, these, how SAP's laying this foundation of technology, of infrastructure, cloud ALM, one of my personal favorites. But, the whole transformation, Signavio and Lean IX coming in there again, you have this role to play that's so much bigger than the role you started with because what you're doing is so much, bigger, particularly now that you plugged into the Signavio at the application business process level, cloud ALM at the sort of the management of this whole process along and activate. I mean, the only problem with today is looking at all the moving parts SAP's bringing together and like, come on, just get this right and make it beautiful and easy because you're setting a lot of expectations and it's a treasure chest full of capabilities that I think, everybody would like unleashed now and not later. So how about sooner? Let's get going.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that is paralyzing for a lot of organizations is they're stuck with roadmap-itis.
Right.
And they're stuck waiting for the updated roadmap from SAP to make some decisions on something, but the roadmap changes. And then they're stuck waiting for, and before you know it, another year has gone by, a new CIO is installed, and they have to start the whole thing all over again. And I think that analysis paralysis and indecisiveness is absolute ball and chain preventing organizations from making smart investments.
Right.
And I hope that enterprise architects play a key steward role in helping to cut through the noise. Don't let the perfect stand in the way of the good and really help set directionally correct bite-sized steps to go add value. And I think that is, in many respects, the definition of the great enterprise architects, the ones that have made the biggest difference.
Yeah.
And I think, Josh, I know that anybody that's been part of the event to go through this experience and create a cohort of others that they're learning with, this creates a shared experience for people to learn from each other.
Right.
And I think that's the other thing is really important. Any enterprise architect will sometimes feel a little lonely, especially if they are the enterprise architect in a large organization surrounded by the department of no and the department of we don't have the money and the department of, well, we like the way we used to do it.
Yeah, those my favorites.
Also known as the brownie, the other brownie, and the other brownie, and they're all laid out on the table, and you've got to find ways to call those out.
Right.
And those leaders that are able to go and navigate that, to tell the stories, to find ways to link this to the vision, to create the change in the organization they want to see, I think that is an amazing enterprise architect that I think more people can aspire to.
Yeah, and I hope more CEOs understand the value of giving that individual a voice, giving them a seat at the table, and making sure that you only have siloed buying because you have, you only have siloed selling because you have siloed buying. You don't have end-to-end processes if you don't have end-to-end ownership. Sometimes, the CEO or the CFO maybe owns that end-to-end thing, but they can't do it alone. They need that ally, and I think that ally comes not just from the CIO, but from specifically the architect whose job it is to make sure that this stuff makes sense.
Help tie it together, make sense, and keep it simple.
Yep.
Josh.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's a lot of fun. We'll do this again sometime.
I'd like that. And thank you guys for watching another edition of The Never Ending Climb for Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for companies running SAP.
Brilliant. Okay, see you next time.